If you've been waiting for the market to cool off before buying here in the Atlanta area, now might be your window of opportunity. There's been a lot of price drops, sellers are getting antsy, and there's just a lot of deals that have been going on. So I'm gonna break down the Atlanta summer real estate market. We'll go over some data and I'll bring you up to speed of what's been going on in the real estate market. And I will say it's leaning a little bit towards the buyer side finally. So, hey guys, my name is Molly and welcome back to my channel where I talk all things living here in the Atlanta area. And hey, if you've got questions or you need help with your home search or your home sale, reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. My contact information is down in that comment section. Would love to hear from you. But guys, I'm gonna break it down. I got some charts ready to go and share with you. But the long story short is that we are kind of more in a balanced market. It's, it depends on the area. I always say it is, even Atlanta, it is micro specific. So you may be hearing these national headlines that's making it sound very dismal, but I will say it just depends on the specific neighborhoods that you're looking at as to whether it is a buyer's market or a seller's market. I would say overall, it's a pretty level playing field, although there are certain markets where it tends to favor a buyer and some markets where it's still a seller's market. So we'll get into it. And I'll also touch briefly on the condo market, which is drastically different from the single family market here in Atlanta. So let's go. Now, before I break down into some charts, just remember I'm going to be talking about the greater Atlanta area, and I'm just going to talk about single family homes right now. Again, it's just impossible to cover every little micro market, but we're going to be talking about Atlanta as a whole, including a lot of its surrounding suburbs. So here we go on some charts. So first question is, what are inventory levels like? Now, I've mentioned this in several other market update videos, and you have to remember that when we are talking about inventory levels, this just kind of gives us a heads up of whether it is a buyer's market or a seller's market. And remember, a balanced market is about 6 months of inventory. If we have less than 6 months of inventory, that is really considered a seller's market. If it's greater than 6 months of inventory, that is considered a buyer's market. And as you will see on this chart, the months of supply here for single family homes, right now, as of July 2025, we are up to 4.8 months. This is about a 37% increase year over year, but you can kind of see from January 2025 up to the current month's data that we have of July, it has just been a complete increase of supply. Just each month it keeps on building and building. So this is great news for buyers. There's more to choose from. You do not have to scramble and run to each listing and make an offer right away. You have some time to think and breathe. Bad news for sellers is that you have more competition to compete with in getting your home sold. So what this translates to is, how long, because we have so much more inventory on the market, how long does it take to get a home sold? Well, it is definitely taking longer. Okay, so let's look at this chart here. I pulled the median cumulative days on market, and what I mean by cumulative days, and there's a couple of charts that will just show you average days on market, but there's one that will show you cumulative days on market. I like looking at this number because sometimes a listing will pop on the market, they withdraw it, and then they try to put it back on the market with a new price or maybe just new photos, and then it looks like it resets the clock at day 0, but really it's already been on the market in reality for 30, 40, 50 days. So I like looking at the cumulative days on market to really give a better accurate snapshot. And you're gonna see as of July of this year, cumulative median days on market is 27 days. Now I will say if you look at average days on market, it's actually gonna be a little bit of a higher number. But this is about a 68% change year over year compared to the same time as last year. And you're going to see, there are some cyclical patterns that you're going to see depending on the season that we are in. And, you can see back in January, we were at a much higher days on market, and that's pretty normal. And as we get into that spring market, the days on markets fall because there's more buyers out shopping. And then as we approach the summertime, we are back to getting higher days on market. So part of this is normal activity, although I will say our levels are increasing year over year. So things are taking a little bit longer than they were last year at the same time to sell. But if you look at this from a macro view, just look at how we are looking in 2025 compared to years past. So at the peak of 2025, median cumulative days on market was 42 days. Now that sounds scary, especially if you're a seller. You're like, oh my gosh, the median amount of time is 42 days. That means it could take actually longer, maybe a little bit less. But when you kind of look back, don't look into 2020 through 2023. Those were outlier years with after the COVID days. But if you go back and look at some of our prior years where we kind of had normal markets, this is not too much of a shocker, to be honest. I mean, look at years of 2013 through 2016. The peak highs in those years were 55 to 57 days. So, being at 42 days, while that does sound like a lot, it's really not so bad when you look at years past. Now, one of your favorite questions I know is churning in the back of your head is, are prices dropping? I mean, for a buyer, you're hoping for the best, and as a seller, obviously you don't want to see that. So let's break it down. When I looked at average sales prices for single family homes, again, this is the greater Atlanta market, and I looked at the peak month of each of the past several years. You're gonna see, usually the peak where you're gonna pay the highest price is always gonna be in that May to June time frame. So in the last 3 years, it's been in June, which is pretty typical. But you're gonna see the peak for June of 2025 was 592,000. In June, the same time last year, it was 603,000. So when you're comparing that month to month, year over year comparison, it did decrease a little bit by 1.6%. So prices are falling just ever so slightly. Now, when you look at the rolling 12-month average, obviously you can see how the prices really drastically increased from 2020 up to 2023. Then it kind of leveled out and then increased some more. And as we're getting into the year of 2025, you're gonna see that the average sales price, when you smooth it all out, it's really kind of just holding steady. It's not increasing much, it's not decreasing much. Last thing I'll touch on is just kind of like the overall sales activity. Now, I will say, talking with other real estate agents and their activity they're having with their clients, we're all kind of saying, yeah, less buyers are out shopping right now in the summer months, and we're feeling it. Like, we can tell that there's just been a lot less closed sales. And you can look at this chart here for single family homes that have closed here in the metro Atlanta area. And the peak here in 2025 was in June. We had about 4,259 homes closed. The peak for 2024 was 4,447. So, when you kind of look, and I've talked about this chart before in my last update, but these last 3 years now have definitely been lower sales activity overall when you compare it to, several years past. Like, we are definitely, our peak is definitely lower than most other years. I mean, the last time we had this low of sales activity, you have to go back to 2012 to 2014. So definitely a lot lower sales activity, but I will say homes are still selling, sellers are still selling, buyers are still buying. It is just at a much lower rate than what we have seen in, I'd say, the last, 8 to 10 years. Now, remember, all the stats that I'm giving you so far are for the greater Atlanta market, but let's dive into a couple of micro market examples just to show you how the story changes. And I'll just touch briefly on them. I picked Morningside as one example, and Morningside is a desirable neighborhood here in the in-town Atlanta market. It's right by Piedmont Park. The schools are desirable, it's family friendly, pretty homes. There are a lot of high priced homes. I mean, the average price point in this neighborhood is $1.3 million. So I looked at a snapshot of homes in the $1 to $1.5 million price range. And you can see days on market in this price range here in Morningside is only 8 days. So that just shows you that there is still a high demand for homes in this price point in the Morningside area. Month supply is only at 2.8 months. So that is much lower than what is the average for the greater market of the Atlanta area. So close to list price is still, closing right at ask price or even a little bit over. There's some multiple offers going on. On the flip side, let's look at an area where it is definitely a buyer's market, and I'm talking about Southwest Atlanta. Now, I didn't pick one specific neighborhood, but just kind of pulled all these neighborhoods together as a whole. They're so close together. So the Southwest Atlanta is a little bit more of an up and coming neighborhood. The price point is much lower. A lot of investors have owned homes here that are flipping them or renting them. So much more investor heavy over here. And you'll see here, days on market is 40 days, or 47 days actually. And month supply, look at that, 9.2 months of supply. So definitely a heavy buyer's market here, just tons of homes sitting on the market. And you can definitely get much more of a deal in this area. In fact, I've had agents that have listings over here and they had said, yeah, like my lockbox is getting spider webs on it. There's just nobody even looking at these homes right now. So that just shows you two different drastic storylines that are happening. Again, it's very micro specific. Okay, so now let's flip gears here and talk a little bit about the condo market, which I feel like I'm a broken record with the condo market, but man, it is not getting better. The condo market is definitely very slow. Not a lot of buyers out there shopping. Let's look at the months of supply for condos. I pulled both Midtown and Buckhead stats. One thing I will say with these numbers is I also limited it to condos under $1 million, because when I include the luxury condos, the numbers get a little bit weird. So I'm just focusing on condos $1 million and below. But you're gonna see months of supply. Look at Midtown in the black, Buckhead in the green. Buckhead, we're at 9 months, Midtown almost at 8 months of supply. And you'll just see from the start of 2025 up into July, the amount of inventory has just been growing month over month. Now with all this supply on the market for condos, you can bet that the average days on market is definitely going to be longer. Actually, I looked at the median cumulative days on market for condos. Midtown, we're at 77 days, Buckhead, 57 days. Now, if you want to look at the average numbers, those were more like in the 98, 99 day range. No surprise with all of that supply that the amount of days it's going to be sitting on the market is going to be longer. So yeah, condos are taking a lot of time to sell. I can share with you a personal story of a beautiful condo listing I had in the Buckhead area. You know, it shows really well. It had a unique feature of an extra large patio, and that one only got 3 showings. We still got it under contract in 19 days, which was very surprising, to be honest. I was pretty shocked at how little buyer activity there was on my condo listing. But at the end of the day, we got it sold, hallelujah. But that just kind of shows you that even if you have like a great condo that shows well and it's priced well, it can still just not have a lot of buyer activity. You can do all the marketing in the world, but the buyers just are not there right now. So if you are a buyer looking in the condo market, good news for you, you have a lot to choose from, and sellers are willing to negotiate and get their condos sold. Now, what's happening with the condo prices? Well, you can see here, Midtown and Buckhead, they are both decreasing ever so slightly. In Midtown, from the beginning of January 2024 up to where we are in July of 2025, it has trickled down, and year over year from July of this year to last year, we're almost down 6%. Buckhead, not quite as much, but it's still falling a little bit down, about 2% year over year. Again, these are condos priced under the $1 million mark. So like I said, Buckhead and Midtown condos, or condos in general, and even the greater Atlanta area, definitely a lot less buyer demand right now. They are just not out there looking. And so if you got a condo that you're trying to sell, you're gonna need to be patient and also price it well. There you go, guys. That is a quick and dirty look at what is going on here in the Atlanta real estate market. Now, to sum it up, buyers, you have options now. You can take a little bit more time, and interest rates right now are starting to fall a little bit, which is also great news as a buyer. Now, sellers, you just have to make sure you are pricing your home accurately, and you need to be prepping your home prior to listing. You get that one shot of making a first good impression. And buyers are being picky. If your home is not showing well, if you got scuffs all over your walls, you got things that are broken, you know, there's a lot of other options buyers can look at, and they'll just kind of move off of yours and go keep looking for other options because they have that ability right now. So you need to do a lot of market prep before getting your home listed. And sellers, you also have to be pricing your home accurately. Don't be looking at stats from 6 to 12 months ago. Right now, it's more crucial to be looking at stats in the last 2 to 3 months only, because the market a year ago is definitely different than it is today. It's definitely shifted to much more of a balanced market, or almost a buyer's market. So with that said, you guys, thanks for hanging with me. If you've got questions, reach out to me. Do not be shy. My contact information is down in that description. Would love to hear from you and see if I can help you out. But thanks for hanging with me. And as always, if you see me out in the wild, make sure you say hello. But you guys, until next time, I'll see you around the neighborhood.